I didn't expect the night to turn into a fight. Honestly, I almost didn't go out at all. It started as one of those random Fridays where nothing feels planned but everything somehow happens anyway. My friend bailed last minute. I'd had a long week, and I was this close to just staying in, ordering food, and zoning out. But something about the quiet in my apartment felt off. Too heavy. So I threw on a hoodie, told myself I'd just grab a drink, and headed out. That decision is the only reason I met Max. The bar wasn't anything special. Loud music, crowded floor, people talking over each other like always. I found a spot near the counter, ordered something cheap, and kept mostly to myself. That's kind of my thing. I'm not antisocial, just selective. I like watching people more than being the center of anything. That's when I noticed him. Max. At first, it wasn't even anything specific. Just this presence across the room. He was leaning against the wall, talking to a couple of guys, laughing in a way that didn't feel forced. Dark hair, a little messy like he didn't care enough to fix it. Broad shoulders, relaxed posture. The kind of guy who looks completely comfortable wherever he is. I remember thinking, yeah, he's definitely out of my league, and immediately forcing myself to look away. That should have been the end of it. But then everything went wrong. It started small. Some guy bumped into me when he was passing by, sloshed half his drink onto my sleeve. I didn't even react at first, just wiped it off and stepped back. Stuff like that happens in crowded places. Watch where you're standing, he snapped. I blinked, confused. You bumped into me, he scoffed, stepping closer. Yeah? Maybe don't take up space then. Normally, I would have just walked away. Not worth it. But something about his tone, condescending, loud enough for people nearby to hear, flipped a switch in me. I'm literally standing still, I said, keeping my voice calm. You're the one who… What? Gonna cry about it? He cut me off, grinning like he wanted a reaction. That's when I realized he wasn't just annoyed. He was looking for a fight. And somehow, I gave it to him. I'm just asking you to chill, I said, but I could already feel the tension building in my chest. People around us started paying attention, that subtle shift where conversations quiet just a little. He stepped even closer, invading my space. Or what? I should have walked away right then. Seriously. That was the moment. Instead, I said, or you can stop acting like an idiot over nothing. Yeah. Not my best move. His expression changed instantly. The smirk dropped, replaced by something sharper. Say that again. I didn't. But it didn't matter. He shoved me. Hard enough that I stumbled back into the edge of the bar, my drink tipping over completely this time. A few people gasped, someone muttered, "Oh shit." And suddenly it wasn't just tension anymore, it was happening. What the hell is your problem? I snapped, pushing myself upright. You are. He shot back, stepping forward again. Then he swung. It wasn't clean. More like a wild, angry punch, but it caught me off guard enough that it clipped my jaw. Not enough to knock me down, but enough to sting, enough to make my head snap to the side. And just like that, everything escalated. I shoved him back, harder this time. Back off! But he came right at me again, grabbing my hoodie, yanking me forward. The noise around us blurred, music, people shouting, chairs scraping, everything turning into this chaotic background while my focus narrowed to just him. I remember thinking, this is actually happening, like I couldn't quite believe I'd let it get this far. We were seconds away from things getting worse. And then, a hand grabbed the guy's arm mid-swing. Firm. Controlled. Not aggressive, just decisive. Hey! A voice cut through everything, low but sharp enough to demand attention. That's enough. I turned, still breathing hard, adrenaline buzzing through my veins. It was him. Max. Up close, he looked even more solid than I expected. Taller than me by a bit, shoulders squared, jaw tight. Not angry, just completely in control of the situation like he'd stepped into fights before and knew exactly how to handle them. The guy tried to yank his arm free. Stay out of it. Max didn't move. Not happening, he said calmly. There was something about the way he said it, not loud, not threatening, just certain, that made even me pause. The guy hesitated. Just for a second. And that second changed everything. Max stepped slightly in front of me, not fully blocking me, but enough to create space. You're done, he added, eyes locked on him. Walk away. For a moment, I thought the guy might swing at him instead. But he didn't. He glanced around, probably realizing people were watching now, that he wasn't the center of control anymore. His confidence cracked just enough. Whatever, he muttered, pulling back. Not worth it. And just like that, it was over. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving this weird vacuum behind where all the tension had been. I stood there, still catching my breath, heart pounding in my chest. Max turned to me. You good? Up close, his voice was different. Softer. Less sharp than it had been a second ago. I nodded, even though my pulse was still racing. Yeah. I think so. He looked me over briefly, like he was checking for damage. He hit you. I've had worse, I said, trying to play it off. He huffed a quiet laugh, just barely. You always get into fights at bars, or was I just lucky tonight? I smirked a little despite everything. Definitely a one-time performance. Good, he said. Would hate to think this is your thing. There was a pause. And for some reason, standing there in the middle of all that noise and leftover adrenaline, it suddenly felt quiet. Like everything had narrowed down to just this moment. I'm Max, he said, offering his hand. Kyle. I shook it. His grip was warm. Steady. And something about that simple contact lingered just a second longer than it should have. I didn't know it yet, but that fight? That stupid, pointless fight? It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for at all. I should have left right after that. That's what a normal person would do, right? Get into a fight, adrenaline still pumping, take it as a sign to call it a night and go home. But instead I stayed. Or more accurately, I didn't know how to leave. Max didn't walk away there. You should get some air, he said, glancing toward the exit. You look like you're still running on adrenaline. I'm fine. I started, but the second I said it, I realized I wasn't. My hands were still slightly shaky, my jaw aching where the punch landed. Max raised an eyebrow like he didn't believe me for a second. Yeah, that's not convincing. I let out a small breath, rubbing the back of my neck. Okay, maybe a little air wouldn't hurt. Come on, he said, already turning toward the door. I hesitated for half a second, because following a stranger outside after a fight probably isn't the smartest move, but something about him didn't feel like a risk. If anything, he was the reason I wasn't dealing with something worse right now. So I followed. Outside, the noise dropped instantly. The cool night air hit me like a reset button, cutting through the heat and chaos from inside. I leaned against the wall near the entrance, exhaling slowly. Better? Max asked, stepping beside me. Yeah, I admitted. Way better. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Just stood there, letting the silence settle in a way that felt comfortable. Not awkward. Not forced. Which was weird, considering we'd met like 5 minutes ago in the middle of a fight. You handled yourself okay, he said after a second. I huffed out a quiet laugh. I got punched. Yeah, but you didn't freeze, he replied. A lot of people do. I shrugged. Didn't really feel like I had a choice. He studied me for a second, like he was trying to figure something out. Still, you didn't escalate it either. Until he pushed you. That's because I'm not usually an idiot, I said. Tonight was an exception. He hummed, like he didn't fully buy that. I glanced at him. What? Nothing, he said, but there was a hint of a smile there. Just thinking you don't seem like someone who loses control easily. That caught me off guard a little. I don't, I said more quietly this time. He nodded, like that confirmed something for him. You're bleeding a little. I blinked. What? Max stepped closer, lifting his hand slightly before hesitating, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. His fingers brushed lightly against my jaw, just under where I'd been hit. The touch was careful, almost too gentle for someone who just stopped a fight. Right there, he said. It's not bad. But I barely registered the words. Because the second he touched me, everything in my body went still. It wasn't dramatic. No big moment. Just a shift. Like my brain suddenly decided this was important. Too close. Too aware. I cleared my throat, stepping back slightly. I'll survive. Max dropped his hand, but I noticed the way his expression changed for a split second. Subtle. Like he'd felt it too. Yeah, he said. You will. There was something in the way he said it that lingered longer than it should have. We ended up sitting on the curb a few minutes later, just off to the side of the entrance. People came and went, laughter spilling out every time the door opened, but it all felt distant now. What made you step in? I asked after a while. Max leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. Didn't like the way it was going. That's it. He glanced at me. You wanted a heroic speech or something? I smirked. I don't know. Maybe a couldn't stand by and watch kind of thing. He chuckled under his breath. Nah. It just didn't sit right. I nodded slowly. Still. You didn't have to. I know. The way he said it, simple, direct, made it feel more intentional somehow. Not random. Not impulsive. He chose to step in. And for some reason, that stuck with me. Thanks, I said, more seriously this time. Max looked at me again, holding my gaze for a second longer than before. Yeah. That was it. No big response. No brushing it off. Just, yeah? A group of people stumbled out of the bar, loud and laughing, breaking the moment. I leaned back slightly, stretching my legs out. So, Max said, you here with anyone? Was supposed to be, I replied. Friend bailed last minute. Lucky me then, he said casually. I raised an eyebrow. Lucky you? Yeah, he said, glancing at me with a small smirk. If he didn't bail, you wouldn't have been standing in that exact spot. Guy doesn't bump into you. Fight doesn't start. I caught on, shaking my head. You're saying me getting punched worked out in your favor? I'm saying, he said, turning slightly toward me, I wouldn't have met you otherwise. That hit differently than I expected. Not in a big, overwhelming way. Just enough to make my chest feel a little tighter. I looked away for a second, trying to play it off. That's a weird way to justify it. Maybe, he said. Still true. Silence settled again, but this time it felt heavier. Not uncomfortable, just charged. Like something was shifting, slowly but definitely. I was actually about to leave before all that happened, I admitted. Max nodded. You still planning to? I thought about it. About going home, being alone again, replaying the fight in my head. Then I glanced at him. Not really, I said. He smiled, just slightly. Good. Why? I asked. Because, he said, standing up and offering his hand this time, I feel like I should at least buy you a drink after getting you into a fight. I laughed, looking at his hand before taking it. Pretty sure I got myself into that. Yeah, he said, pulling me up. But I'm taking partial responsibility anyway. His grip lingered for just a second again before letting go. And yeah, I noticed it this time. We didn't go back inside. Instead, we walked down the street to a quieter place, somewhere with dim lighting and way less chaos. The kind of bar where you can actually hear each other talk. And that's where things really started to change. Because once we sat down, once the noise faded and it was just the two of us, Max stopped being just a guy who stepped into a fight. And started becoming someone I couldn't stop paying attention to. The second bar felt like a completely different world. Dim lights, low music, half-empty tables. The kind of place where conversations didn't have to compete with everything else. It took me a minute to adjust after the chaos we just left behind. Max seemed completely at ease. Better? He asked as we sat down across from each other. Yeah, I said, glancing around. This is more my speed. I figured, he replied. You didn't exactly look like you were enjoying the crowd back there. I smirked. Was it that obvious? Only if you were paying attention, he said. Something about that stuck. He was paying attention. We ordered drinks, something simple, and for a few minutes, the conversation stayed light. Where we were from, what we did, the usual surface level stuff. I'm in marketing, I said. Nothing exciting. Max shook his head slightly. You say that like it means nothing. It kind of doesn't. I shrugged. It's just work. Still takes a certain kind of person, he said. Reading people, understanding what they respond to. I gave him a look. You make it sound way more interesting than it is. Or maybe you're underselling yourself. I let out a quiet laugh. You always analyze strangers like this? Only the ones I step into fights for, he said casually. That again. Simple. Direct. But it landed. What about you? I asked. What do you do when you're not breaking up bar fights? He leaned back slightly in his chair, one arm resting on the table. Personal training. Some coaching on the side. Yeah? I nodded, taking that in. That fits. He raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I gestured vaguely at him. You've got that calm authority thing. He huffed a quiet laugh. Calm authority? I don't know how else to explain it, I said. You didn't even raise your voice back there, and the guy still backed off. Max's expression shifted slightly, more thoughtful now. Most people don't actually want to fight, he said. They just want to feel like they're winning something. That guy definitely wanted one. Yeah, Max admitted. But even then, if you don't give them what they're expecting, it throws them off. I nodded slowly. That why you stepped in? I asked. Because you knew how to handle it? He looked at me for a second before answering. No, he said. I stepped in because I didn't like the way he was looking at you. That wasn't the answer I expected. I blinked. What? Max didn't look away this time. You didn't notice? Notice what? He'd already decided you were the target, he said. Before you even said anything back. I frowned slightly, thinking back. I thought he just got pissed when I responded. Max shook his head. Nah. Guys like that pick someone first. Then they look for a reason. Something about that made my stomach tighten a little. Not fear, exactly. Just awareness. And I was just convenient? I asked. Max tilted his head slightly. You were standing alone. Not trying to draw attention. Easy for him to think you wouldn't push back. I let out a breath, leaning back in my chair. Guess he misread that. Yeah, Max said quietly. He did. There was a shift after that. The conversation didn't stop, but it slowed. Became more intentional. Like we were both paying a little more attention to what the other was saying. Or not saying. At some point, I realized I hadn't checked my phone once. Not out of politeness. I just didn't think about it. So you do this often? I asked. Watch people figure them out? Max shrugged. Comes with the job. And what's your read on me then? I said, half joking. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied me again. Not in a weird or uncomfortable way, just focused. Like he was actually thinking about it. You want the honest version? He asked. I hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Yeah. Max leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice just enough that it felt more personal. You act like you've got everything under control, he said. Like nothing really gets to you. I opened my mouth to respond, but he kept going. But you still showed up alone tonight, he added. Even though you didn't really want to. That caught me off guard. I started, then stopped. Because he wasn't wrong. I just didn't want to sit at home, I said instead. Exactly, he said. I frowned slightly. That doesn't mean anything. It means something, Max replied. You just don't like admitting it. There was no judgment in his voice. No push. Just certainty. And somehow, that made it harder to brush off. I took a sip of my drink, buying myself a second. You do this with everyone? I asked. Do what? Get in their head 5 minutes after meeting them. He smirked slightly. You've been here longer than 5 minutes. Not helping your case. He leaned back again, relaxed. You could always tell me I'm wrong. I looked at him. Really looked this time. At the way he held eye contact without forcing it. The way he didn't rush to fill silence. The way everything about him felt steady. And yeah, a little intimidating. Maybe you're not completely wrong, I admitted. His expression softened just slightly. Didn't think I was. Another pause. But this one felt different. Heavier. Not awkward. Just loaded with something neither of us was saying out loud. You always this intense? I asked quietly. Max let out a small breath, like he was debating his answer. Only when I'm interested, he said. My chest tightened a little at that. Interested in what? I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't look away. In you. There it was. Simple. Direct. No hesitation. And somehow, that hit harder than anything else that night. I should have deflected. Made a joke. Changed the subject. That's what I usually do. But instead, I just sat there for a second, holding his gaze. Because the thing was, I didn't want to shut it down. Yeah? I said finally, my voice quieter than before. Max nodded slightly. Yeah. Another pause. Longer this time. And then, before I could overthink it. Good, I said. Something shifted right then. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just a line crossed. And neither of us pretended it didn't happen. After that, things didn't go back to normal. Not that there really was a normal to begin with. But whatever this was between me and Max, it stopped pretending to be casual. Neither of us said it out loud, but it was there. Sitting right in the middle of the table with us. And neither of us moved away from it. You're not surprised, Max said after a minute. It wasn't a question. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. A little, I admitted. Just not, in the way you probably think. He tilted his head slightly. Try me. I hesitated, then shrugged. I guess I'm more surprised at how direct you are about it. Max smirked faintly. You'd rather I wasn't? No, I said quickly, too quickly. Then I caught myself shaking my head. I just mean, most people don't say things like that so easily. I'm not most people, he said. There was no arrogance in it. Just a statement. And yeah, that tracked. I traced the rim of my glass for a second, thinking. You do this a lot? I asked. Just tell people you're interested like that. Max watched me carefully. No. That answer came faster than I expected. No? I repeated. He shook his head. If I say it, I mean it. Something about that landed deeper than it should have. I nodded slowly, trying not to overthink it, but failing a little. Your turn, he said. My turn for what? To be honest. I let out a quiet laugh. I've been honest. Not really, he said. You've been careful. I glanced at him. And you haven't? Nope. That almost made me smile. Okay, I said, sitting up a little straighter. What do you want to know? Max didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward slightly again, resting his arms on the table, closing the space between us just enough to make it feel more focused. Were you disappointed when I said that? He asked. The question hit more directly than I expected. I frowned slightly. Disappointed? Yeah, he said. When I said I was interested in you. I held his gaze. And for a second, I thought about dodging it. Giving some vague answer, keeping things light. But I was already past that point. No, I said quietly. I wasn't. Max's expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes did. Subtle, but there. Good, he said. The tension between us shifted again. Closer now. Less cautious. I'm just not used to it, I added after a second. To what? To someone being that sure, I said. Max studied me. People usually hesitate with you. Or they don't say anything at all. I shrugged. Why do you think that is? I hesitated. Because I don't make it obvious, I said finally. Or easy. He nodded like that made sense. Yeah. I can see that. I raised an eyebrow. You say that like it's a challenge. Maybe it is. That small smirk was back. And yeah, I felt that. Why me? I asked before I could stop myself. Max didn't even blink. You really want to know? I nodded. He leaned back slightly this time, like he was taking a second to put it into words. You didn't try to impress anyone tonight, he said. Didn't try to stand out. You were just there. I frowned. That's your reason? That's part of it, he said. Most people are loud about who they are. You're not. That's not always a good thing. Didn't say it was, he replied. But it makes you harder to read. And you like that? He held my gaze again. Yeah. I don't know why that got to me as much as it did. Maybe because it felt real. Not some generic line. Not something he could have said to anyone. It felt specific. To me. You keep looking at me like you're trying to figure something out, I said. Max tilted his head slightly. Maybe I am. Find anything yet? He paused. Yeah. My chest tightened a little. And? You're not as closed off as you think you are, he said. I scoffed lightly. That's not true. It is, he said. You just don't let most people get far enough to see it. I opened my mouth to argue. Then stopped. Because, again, he wasn't wrong. Okay, I said after a second, shaking my head slightly. You're kind of annoying. Max laughed, low and easy. I've been called worse. I'm sure you have. Usually by people who don't like being figured out, he added. I pointed at him. Exactly. The tension broke just enough for both of us to breathe again. But it didn't disappear. If anything, it just settled into something more steady. At some point, I realized how close we were sitting now. Not physically, there was still space between us, but in everything else. The way the conversation flowed. The way eye contact lingered just a little too long. The way either of us seemed in a hurry to leave. You still glad you stepped in? I asked quietly. Max didn't hesitate. Yeah. Even if it hadn't turned into this? I gestured lightly between us. He leaned forward again, just slightly. It was already turning into this, he said. My pulse kicked up at that. You sure about that? I asked. He nodded once. Yeah. There was a moment then. One of those quiet, suspended ones where everything feels like it could go in a different direction depending on what you do next. And I felt it. That pull. That what now? Max's gaze dropped briefly, to my mouth, then back up to my eyes. Subtle. But not subtle enough. My breath caught for just a second. And I knew he saw it. Tell me to stop, he said, voice lower now. I didn't. Didn't even think about it. Why would I do that? I replied. That was all it took. He stood up first, not abruptly, just decisively. I followed without thinking too much about it. And when we stepped outside again, the air felt different this time. Heavier. Closer. We didn't walk right away. Just stood there for a second. Too close now to pretend this was still just conversation. You sure? Max asked quietly. I knew what he meant. And yeah, I was. Yeah, I said. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. Not aggressive. Just intentional. His hand came up to my jaw again, steadier this time, thumb brushing lightly near where I'd been hit earlier like he remembered. And the second it happened, everything else dropped away. The noise, the street, the people passing by. None of it mattered. Because the guy who stepped into a fight for me was now the one pulling me closer. And I didn't stop him. I didn't expect it to feel like that. I've kissed guys before. It wasn't new. But this felt different in a way I couldn't immediately explain. Maybe it was the build-up, or the way Max didn't rush it, like he already knew I wasn't going anywhere. Or maybe it was the fact that just an hour ago, I didn't even know him. His hand stayed at my jaw, steady, grounding. Not pulling me in too hard, not letting go either. Just enough pressure to keep me there. And I stayed. That was the part one couldn't ignore. Because I chose to stay. When we pulled back, it wasn't abrupt. Just a slight shift, enough to breathe again. But we didn't move far. Still close. Still right there. Max's eyes stayed on mine, searching, not uncertain, just checking. You okay? He asked quietly. I let out a small breath, trying to steady myself. Yeah. My voice came out a little lower than usual. He noticed. I could tell. You don't sound sure, he said. I am, I replied, meeting his gaze again. Just didn't expect that. A faint smirk touched his lips. In a bad way? I shook my head. No. And I meant that. There was a pause. But not the kind that breaks momentum. The kind that builds it. Max's hand dropped slowly from my jaw, but his fingers brushed lightly against my neck as they moved away, like he wasn't in a rush to lose contact completely. That small detail? Yeah. I felt that. You still planning to call it a night? He asked. I glanced down the street, then back at him. The honest answer came out before I could filter it. No. His expression shifted slightly, something satisfied, but not smug. Good, he said again. We started walking without really deciding to. Side by side, not touching, but close enough that I was aware of every small movement. The quiet of the street wrapped around us, a contrast to everything that had happened earlier. So, I said after a minute, is this how you usually end your nights? Breaking up fights and then this? Max let out a low laugh. Not even close. Yeah? Yeah, he said, glancing at me. You're kind of an exception. I raised an eyebrow. You say that like you've known me longer than an hour. Doesn't take that long sometimes, he replied. I didn't answer right away. Because part of me agreed. We slowed near the corner, either of us making a move to turn or separate. That same what now feeling came back. Stronger this time. You live far? Max asked. Not really, I said. 10 minutes, maybe? He nodded. Walking? Yeah. I'll walk you. It wasn't a question. And I didn't treat it like one. Okay. The walk should have felt normal. Two guys heading in the same direction, late at night, nothing unusual about it. But it didn't. Every now and then, our arms brushed slightly, not intentional, but not exactly avoided either. Each time, it lingered just a fraction longer than it needed to. You're quieter now, Max said after a bit. I glanced at him. Just thinking. About? I hesitated. About how fast this all happened, I admitted. Too fast? He asked. I thought about it. About the fight. The conversation. The kiss. About the fact that I didn't feel like pulling away. No, I said finally. Just unexpected. Max nodded like he understood that completely. Sometimes that's better, he said. Or worse, I added. He smirked slightly. You think this is worse? I looked at him. At the way he walked, calm, steady, like nothing about this felt uncertain to him. And yeah, that grounded me more than I expected. No, I said again. I don't. We reached my building sooner than I wanted to admit. I slowed down slightly, almost without realizing it. Max noticed. Here? He asked. Yeah. Neither of us moved right away. Just stood there, facing each other again, like earlier, but this time, it felt different. More defined. This is usually where people say goodnight, I said. Max tilted his head slightly. Usually. I exhaled a small laugh. You don't do usual, do you? Not really. Yeah. That tracked. Another pause. Longer this time. You gonna invite me up? He asked. There it was. Direct. No hesitation. No games. My chest tightened slightly, not from pressure, just awareness. Because this was the moment where things either stopped or didn't. I looked at him for a second. Really looked. At the guy who stepped into a fight for me. Who read me way too easily. Who kissed me like he meant it. Yeah, I said quietly. Max didn't react dramatically. Just a small nod. Like he already knew what my answer would be. We walked inside together, the shift immediate. The outside world disappeared again, replaced by something quieter. More contained. More real. Standing in the elevator, the space felt smaller than it should have. Either of us spoke. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything we weren't saying. When the doors opened, I stepped out first, aware of him right behind me. Every step down the hallway felt heavier. Not in a bad way. Just intentional. I unlocked my door, pushing it open and stepping inside. Then turned back to him. For a second, we just stood there. That same pause again. That same tension. And then he stepped in, closing the door behind him. The second the door clicked shut, everything shifted again. Not rushed. Not out of control. Just closer. More real. For a moment, neither of us moved. I stood a few steps inside, key still in my hand, while Max stayed near the door. The space between us wasn't big, but it felt charged in a way that made it hard to ignore. It was different from outside. Out there had been noise, movement, distractions. In here? Nothing but silence. And him. You always this quiet? Max asked. His voice was lower now. Not in a forced way, just naturally softer in the stillness of the room. I let out a small breath, setting my keys down on the counter. Only when I'm thinking too much, I said. He stepped a little closer. And you're thinking too much right now? Maybe. That a problem? I shook my head slowly. Not yet. That got a faint smile out of him. Small, but real. He didn't close the distance all at once. Just a step. Then another. Like he was giving me time to decide if I wanted him there. I didn't move back. Didn't break eye contact either. You can tell me to stop, he said again. Same as before. Same steady tone. I tilted my head slightly. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. I know, I said. And I did. That was the thing about Max, nothing he said felt empty. Another step closer. Now he was right in front of me. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from him again, like outside, but stronger now, without the cold air cutting through it. You still overthinking it? He asked quietly. I exhaled, shaking my head just a little. No. Good. This time, when he reached for me, there was no hesitation. His hand found my jaw again, familiar now, grounding in a way that made everything else fade out. And when he kissed me, it wasn't tentative anymore. Still controlled, still intentional, but deeper. Like we'd already crossed that first line and neither of us was pretending otherwise. I stepped closer without thinking. Closed the last bit of space between us. My hand caught lightly at his shirt, not pulling, just holding there, like I needed something to anchor me in the moment. And yeah, this was the part where it could have felt overwhelming. Where I could have pulled back, slowed it down, reset. But I didn't. Because it didn't feel rushed. It felt right. When we broke apart this time, it was slower. Less about stopping. More about catching breath. Max rested his forehead lightly against mine for a second. Not something I expected. Not something I was ready for either. Because it wasn't just physical. It was grounding. You okay? He asked again, quieter this time. I nodded, my voice not quite there yet. Yeah, I am. His thumb brushed lightly along my jaw again, slower now. Less checking for injury. More something else. You don't have to figure everything out tonight, he said. That caught me off guard. I pulled back just enough to look at him properly. What? He shrugged slightly. You've been in your head since we sat down at the second bar. I huffed a quiet laugh. You really don't miss anything, do you? Not with you, he said. There it was again. That directness. I'm just trying to keep up, I admitted. With what? I gestured vaguely between us. This. Max's expression softened slightly. You're doing fine, he said. I studied him for a second. You're not? I asked. Not what? Thinking about it? I am. That surprised me. You don't seem like it. I just don't let it slow me down, he said. That made sense. Maybe a little too much. Another quiet moment settled in. But this one didn't feel tense. It felt steady. So what happens now? I asked. Not joking. Not deflecting. Just asking. Max looked at me for a second, like he was considering the question seriously. Now? He said. I nodded. He stepped just a little closer again, not closing space this time, just enough to keep that connection there. Now we stop pretending this is just about tonight. That hit. Not in a heavy way. Just clear. And what is it about? I asked quietly. Max held my gaze. You, he said. Simple. Again. Always like that with him. I let out a slow breath, something in my chest settling in a way I didn't expect. Because for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about what this meant. I was just in it. Okay, I said. And this time, when he kissed me again, there was no hesitation left at all. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Time kind of stopped making sense after a while. Not in some dramatic, movie-type way, just everything outside the apartment stopped mattering. The fight, the bar, the noise, all of it felt distant now. Like it belonged to a different night. Because this felt like something else entirely. At some point, we pulled back again, not because we had to, but because it felt like we'd crossed into something quieter. Something more real. Max didn't step away right after. He stayed close, his hand still resting lightly against my side now, like he wasn't ready to lose contact completely. And honestly, neither was I. You still thinking? He asked. His voice had that same calm tone, but softer now. I shook my head slightly. Not like before. Good. I let out a small breath, glancing at him. You? He gave a faint smile. Yeah. Just not about leaving. That got a quiet laugh out of me. Yeah, same. We ended up on the couch without really deciding to. Not rushing. Not pushing anything further. Just sitting there. Close enough that our shoulders touched, legs angled toward each other slightly. It felt simple. Which was weird, considering how the night started. I almost didn't go out tonight, I said after a while. Max glanced at me. Yeah? Yeah. I nodded. Friend bailed. I was this close to just staying in. He leaned back slightly, one arm resting along the back of the couch behind me. Glad you didn't? I looked at him. Because of the fight? He shook his head. No. A small pause. Because I met you. That should have felt like a line. But it didn't. Because of the way he said it. No exaggeration. No performance. Just honest. Funny way to meet someone, I said. Max smirked slightly. I've had worse. I'm sure you have. Another quiet moment settled in. But this time, it felt settled. Like whatever tension had been building all night had finally found somewhere to land. You do this a lot? I asked. He raised an eyebrow. What? Walk into someone's night and just change it. Max let out a low breath, shaking his head. No. Yeah? I said. Yeah, he replied. This isn't normal for me either. That surprised me more than anything else he'd said. You don't seem like it, I admitted. I know, he said. But it's true. I studied him for a second, trying to figure out if he meant it. And yeah, he did. So what is this then? I asked quietly. Not pushing. Just asking again. Max didn't answer right away. He looked at me like he had earlier, focused, steady, like he wasn't going to give me something vague just to fill the silence. I don't think it's just tonight, he said. My chest tightened slightly at that. Yeah? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. I leaned back into the couch a little, processing that. Because part of me expected this to be exactly that, just a night. Unexpected. Intense. Then over. But sitting there with him? It didn't feel like that. You saying that like a promise? I asked. Max's expression softened just slightly. No, he said. I'm saying it like I want it to be true. That felt real. More real than anything else that night. I let out a quiet breath, nodding slowly. Okay, I said. Another pause. But this one didn't feel uncertain. It felt open. You got plans tomorrow? He asked after a bit. I shook my head. Not really. Good. I smirked slightly. You always assume things are just going to continue like this. Not assume, he said. Just hoping you want the same thing. I looked at him. At the guy who stepped into a fight without hesitation. Who read me better than I expected. Who didn't hide what he wanted, but didn't push either. And yeah, I did. Yeah, I said. I do. Max nodded once, like that was enough. Because it was. We didn't rush anything after that. Didn't need to. The night slowed down in the best way possible, conversation fading in and out, small touches that didn't feel accidental anymore, the kind of quiet that feels full instead of empty. At some point, I realized something. Not in a big, dramatic way. Just a simple thought that settled in my head and stayed there. If that guy hadn't picked a fight, if I'd stayed home, if Max hadn't stepped in, none of this would have happened. And for once, I didn't feel like I needed to question it, or overthink it, or figure out where it was going right away. Because sometimes, something unexpected doesn't need to make perfect sense. It just needs to happen. And that night, the fight I never wanted turned into something I definitely did.